It's only week 2 of Plunder, and the story seems to be heating up. Spider wants to use the power from the dark relics to their advantage, but Mithrax gets enraged at the thought.
Never summon me like this again.
We learn more about Aramis' connection to the Witness. The Vanguard discuss dealing Spider over to Mara Sov, and tons more. This week we have a great story to unpack. Let's first recap what happened, and then I'll read the 2 new lore entries. One of those is a conversation between Zavala and Ikora about telling Marasov where the spider is, well, because she wants him dead. And the other is about Mithrax's mother encountering Aramis and her brutality long ago, acquiring the spider and his brother in a trade. At the end of last week's quest, we were on pause as Mithrax and Eido needed some time to examine the artifacts further, study them to see what they are and what the next step should be. Mithrax tells us something pretty scary.
Guardian, I greet you in the light, and yet I feel adrift in shadow. Eido and I studied the artifact you claimed from the pirates, and it emanates pure darkness. It is an object pulled from Elixir legend, and I fear it is not the only one of its kind. The old crews fought and died for these relics, believing they could bestow power. The very power the great machine withheld. That is why Aramis enlisted their help. She seeks the relics, and pirate legends hint at where they may be hidden. And if her task is at the command of the Witness, Aramis cannot be allowed to claim the powers within. If she does, all will fall to corruption. You must find them. You must.
So Aramis wants these dark relics, because back in the day, old fallen crews believed they housed enormous amounts of power. They even compare it to the power of the Traveler, and we know how Traveler hungry the Fallen were back in those days. This is the reason why Aramis has recruited these Elixir crews after she was freed from stasis by the Witness. These relics have some weird mystery behind them, which we'll talk about in a bit, and her mission in finding this has commenced throughout this season. Our next stop would be an expedition and then a pirate hideout, where Drifter and Eido have us take down the Sharpshooter. Mithrax is angry at his daughter Eido for assisting us, and he wants her only to study and be a scribe, not help us out here in the battlefield.
Hey, hero. Looking to grab another relic?
May I interject?
Be my guest.
The commander of this band of pirates is named Eramis, and he's widely known as an expert marksman. I would not stand still long enough to test this reputation.
Good job, Guardian. You too, little sister. Read about this in one of your books?
No, I didn't. Isn't that exciting?
Eido, what are you doing?
Aiding Drifter and the Guardian. We have collected another relic before it was able to come into Aramis possession.
Your help is needed in studying the relics, not in our search for them.
If I can render assistance, then I should do so.
Let us speak privately.
Very well.
Huh. Glad I stayed out of that. Anyway, good job. Let's get this treasure tucked away.
After we place the second relic, I'm skipping around a little bit, Eido gives us some interesting info and a voice line from Aramis. Aramis relays a message to this sharpshooter Eramis, saying, "Deliver this relic as agreed upon, and I'll forgive you of this hate and unfair actions you have towards me. If not, you'll face the power of something unimaginable, the Witness."
yielded a surprising fragment of intel. This was found in the pirate hideout, along with the relic.
You forget your place, Eramis. I am no longer the ship stealer. I am a Kell, and your obedience is my right. Deliver the relic as agreed, and I will overlook your attempts to extort me. Do it, or face the wrath of a power you cannot imagine.
I believe Aramis Kell references the Witness. Perhaps she really has abandoned her calls for Elixni unity.
Back in the Elixni Quarter, Spider wishes to speak to Mithrax about the power that these relics hold. Spider says, "We're kind of in a place of power right now, Mithrax. Why don't we use these relics ourselves and get revenge on Aramis?" Mithrax doesn't like this and gets pretty angry. He even uses the Spider's real name in raucous.
Mithrax, my old friend. There's a matter I wish to discuss with you. My people's concerns are my own. I will listen. I hoped you'd say that. Rumor has it your new crew has been bringing back delightful baubles, pulled from the old shores. Are you asking for a share? Do you think me so petty? We're on the same side here. We have our eyes on the same horizon. Those relics resurfaced for a reason. The power belongs to us. We could have everything this time. We need only take it. Your words are careless. What? The Guardian? Huh. A trusted accomplice. No, I did not imagine you would speak like that where I might hear you. Come now, Mithrax. I know you. Think of your house. Think of your daughter. We could have everything Aramis wants. Wouldn't that be some lovely payback, huh? You will leave that behavior in the past. You will not speak of it here beneath the great machine, or I will silence you. There's no call for that. Do you hear me, Ruckus? I hear you. Never summon me like this again. Get out. We're closed.
Now, watching this interaction really just made me think about how far Destiny's story has come. We've known Mithrax and Spider for a bit, and their characters just keep unfolding new layers, giving us more history behind why they are the way they are. Spider is a mob boss of sorts and wants to take this power, and Mithrax the complete opposite. Mithrax from this season appears to have been different in the past, and even Spider recognizes this with Eido. He could have been a killer pirate, but now works in the ways of the light, and he despises how Spider summons him like this.
Boom, 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 boom. Ah, hey there, hero. Sorry, getting a little swept up in all this adventuring. I'm on debrief duty while your Elixni buddies are busy with the relics you got from Aramis's crew. Eido's researching how to tap into their power. The kid's thorough, I'll give her that. She thinks something's hidden inside him. I swear she was about to crack one open before Mithrax stopped her. Now me? I took one look and knew those things were bad news. Gave me a little shiver. Reminds me of something. From a long time ago. Huh. Maybe I should do a little research of my own.
Upon debriefing with Drifter, we learn Eido is trying to crack open the relics and learn how to use this power. Mithrax stops her. Drifter then says he feels like he's seen this somewhere before, which is kind of interesting. We know that the fallen crews existed around the time of our Dark Age, and during that time, so did the Drifter. He even had his own bar. He also, of course, has been all around the system, so it's hard to tell what he could have seen that's like this, but it could be a number of things. Was it that ice moon with light-suppressing creatures? The fourth tomb of Nezarec? Whatever it is, Mithrax is also aware of the power these hold and is frightened to let it escape.
Baron Spider, I greet you in the light.
Baron? I haven't heard that in some time. What is it you want, Scribe Eido?
I have heard that you have a great interest in human cultures, and as such have acquired many curiosities.
Yes. I had quite the collection before my unfortunate relocation. But this isn't why you hailed me. Get to the point.
I have a question.
Of course you do.
You and my father came from the House of Wolves, once known as the House of Gentle Weavers. I have very little record of that time. A first-hand account would be invaluable.
The Kell wouldn't like my speaking to you.
Mithrax Kell would understand. This is important to the history of House Light, of which you are a part.
You don't know what your father is capable of, little scribe.
What does that mean?
This conversation never happened.
That went rather poorly.
So pretty cool, these two were a part of the House of Wolves. Spider's mentions say Mithrax was capable of some pretty crazy things. Was he a pirate leader? The last 2 weeks at the end of the quest, something weird has been happening between us and the Spider. If you head back to him at the end, he will have 3 engrams for you to choose from. Last week I think we got some legendary surprise, and this week a green armor drop that was $13.50 or something. Now Spider is up to something here. If you read the text, in week 1, Eido picks up strange energy readings peeking from the ether tank. And in week 2, a brief interference spike from our coordinates in the ether tank. Now we don't know what, I want to hear your thoughts below, but something weird is going on here. Spider may be broadcasting our whereabouts elsewhere. Someone else might be spying in, like Marasov, who wants Spider dead. Or maybe it's something completely different. Is he going behind Mithrax's back to power these dark relics? This only seems to happen when we decrypt the engrams, but we'll need some more info for sure. This week's lore entries deal with Ikora and Zavala speaking about handing over Spider to Marasov, and the other lore book about the uprising of Spider and Mithrax, his mother who dealt with Aramis long ago and taking in Raucus and Civics. Here is the first one from Between Stolen Stars, titled 2 Jurisdiction. And if Mara demands his extradition? Ikora crosses her arms behind her back and arched her eyebrow at Zavala. The Vanguard leaders were sequestered in Zavala's office. A terse missive from Petrovenge lay at issue between them. Then we'll happily accommodate her, the commander responded with a wry smile. But I suspect Mara's attention is elsewhere. Perhaps she needs a reminder, Ikora floated casually. It would give us the political cover to act. It would, Zavala frowned. But even if we evict him, I'm reluctant to send him back to the reef. Ikora chuckled dryly. A fate worse than death. I can only imagine what the Techians have dreamed up for him. Besides, the commander said, turning an asylum seeker over to the Awoken would needlessly provoke the Elixni. He tried to keep his tone light, but it betrayed him as he felt the seeds of an argument starting to form. True, Ikora shrugged. But the Spider's very presence in the city is a provocation. You saw what happened when the House of Light arrived, all the unjustified hatred. Zavala grunted in reluctant acknowledgement. In Spider's case, the anger would be entirely justified, Ikora pressed, trying to forestall Zavala's inevitable objection. He would give critics of Elixni resettlement plenty of fresh ammunition. It would set relations back by a year, and we've only just stabilized. You're right, he conceded. Spider is more trouble than he's worth. Ikora sighed. If I'm right, then why are you about to fight me on this? Zavala smiled softly. They knew each other so well. 2 reasons, he replied. First, Spider is somewhat of a cultural liaison between the Elixni and humanity. He was welcoming to Guardians when most of the shore was still a war zone. Is that how you're framing his ghost shell collection? Cultural exchange? Ikora wrinkled her nose in distaste. That's a mark against on my ledger. Mine as well, Zavala replied. But we have to accept the Elixni for who they are, warts and all. If we're going to live with them, we have to understand them. And nobody understands both sides like Spider. And second, Ikora prompted, we never know who might become an ally. Zavala gestured in the direction of the Elixni quarter below. The number of Guardians that Mithrax has killed over the years, he trailed off with a shake of his head. But now, Mithrax fights for the last city as his home, he continued, turning back to Ikora. It was unimaginable even a decade ago, but here we are. And in Eido, I see the first real hope for collective peace in my lifetime, not just a ceasefire, but a real peace. Zavala shrugged. In a century or 2, who knows what Spider might become? Ikora narrowed her eyes and pressed her lips together in firm disapproval. Zavala smiled to himself, knowing he had won. So the Vanguard received that letter from Petra about the Spider's whereabouts. Ikora says, sure, give him the Spider, get him out of here. And Zavala says, let's keep him, who knows what can become of him, maybe he'll help us out like Mithrax did, join our side. I believe there was an entry last week where Mara and Petra discussed this, so you can look that up if you'd want, and I'm sure I'll make a video on all of these together at some point. Now we have the first entry, the Long Drift in the Above All Else lore book. My family named me Mithrax, sturdy heart, and held me aloft in the shadow of the great machine. My birth name was chosen to extol my strength as a hatchling. My chosen name would be aspirational. On my 3rd molting, I chose the name Enax, gentle hands. I would be the greatest weaver our house had ever known. I was so sure of it. Then our world ended. Then I was sure of nothing. The end of our civilization came from the outside in, like a hand slowly closing around a throat. At first, it didn't feel real. Reese was gone, and my house was trapped aboard a ketch, knowing that there was nothing at our backs. For so long, we broadcasted distress calls into the dark, hoping for others on the long drift to find us and offer succor. Help never came. Every satellite world we visited, the story was the same. Desolation, death, despair. Weeks of searching turned into years, and I feared we were the only ship that slipped between those proverbial fingers of destruction. Were we the last? We had to continue hoping it wasn't so. As we drifted among the stars, we inevitably lost members of our house along the way. I wove the finest memorial shrouds for our dead, so that they could rest in security and peace. Then, as the egg cloth ran out, we could not give them the dignity of binding. My gentle hands were eventually used to separate dead meat from carapace. We would not starve in the dark. My son was brought into a world of isolation, abandonment, and suffering. I should have crushed his egg and woven it into a cloth, a regret I will always carry. My sentimentality for the old world won out, and bitter hope for the future stayed my hand. I named him after my father. I did not know if we would carry on our house's tradition of birth names and chosen names. What purpose did it serve now? What did it matter? My son's father died weeks after giving birth. He was not missed. It was better this way. His death was something I did not regret. It would be years before we encountered another catch. It bore the sigil of the House of Dancers, renowned for their skill with machines and their generosity to those in need. Their Cal agreed to send an emissary to discuss our needs. I knew this emissary, Aramis, when we were children. All I knew of her in adulthood was that she had a wife and hatchlings. I had hoped the whirlwind had taken it from her. I hated myself for wanting that. Aramis was no longer the meek child I once knew. That much was certain when I greeted her aboard my ketch. She brought 2 hatchlings with her, just barely old enough to walk on their own. They were mischievous little things, the round one constantly trying to tug the taller one's arms off until Aramis disciplined them. I carried my son, swaddled to my chest, as a show of trust. Negotiations between us were tense. I quickly realized that the House of Dancers had no interest in sharing their resources, but rather in assessing our own vulnerabilities. When it was clear to Aramis that we could not be easily disabled and stripped of our ether, we found a compromise. House of Dancers would be supplied with materials for repairs, and in turn, we would take on some of their people, along with a fractional store of ether. She was sending them to die with us, rather than condemn them to the cold and uncaring depths of space where her people could see. I learned who Aramis had become, and what ideals she lived by. 2 hands in greeting, 2 hands concealed. It was an inequitable deal, and Aramis knew it. Your alternative is death, she offered me. A coward's voice slipped out of my mouth when I declined that choice. I asked her where her wife was, hoping I would inspire her to feel, for a moment, as hopeless as I did. She did not so much as flinch, then foisted the 2 hatchlings onto me. They were not hers, as I had assumed, but the first of the House of Dancers that we would take in the exchange. Too many hands and not enough ether to go around. The simplest solution was also the most difficult one. We had to find a way to thin our numbers again. So Mithrax's mother encountered Aramis's ship during the long drift and made a deal. Enax, Mithrax's mother, was a part of the House of Weavers. Aramis, the House of Dancers, which later would become the House of Devils. The deal was this: Weavers give Aramis some supplies and they will take on some of their crew. In that card, we also learned Aramis had a wife and handed over these 2 hatchlings first, one being described as round. So with this info, we can kind of infer that the round one was the Spider and the other one was his brother Civix. This is the one who we killed back in the Black Armory DLC. Now we'll have more entries in the future, but Spider may have grown up with Mithrax and knows his old pirate ways, so it'll be pretty cool to see how all of this unfolds. Anyway, Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. If you'd like to see some other Destiny lore and mysteries just like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.